Everyone, and welcome back. I would like to call all the dignitaries on the stage, please. Our moderator, Professor Sumit K. Kundu, Journal of Business Research and Journal of International Management. Professor William Newbury, AIB Insights. Professor Elizabeth Rose, AOM's Collection. Professor Suma Atre, Industrial and Corporate Change. Professor Pavan Budhwar, HRM Journal. Professor Alan W. Bird, Journal of International Business Studies. Professor Vijay Pereira, International Studies of Management and Organization. And Professor Justin D. Simon, Organizational Research Methods and Journal of Organizational Behavior. On behalf of the INDAM Committee and the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, KOLKATA, I welcome you to an enriching Meet the Editor session. We have an excellent lineup of eminent speakers in this afternoon session, and without further delay, I would like to introduce them to you. Our first speaker in this session will be Professor William Newbury, popularly known as Professor Bill. Professor Bill is a professor and writer eminent scholar of global business at Florida International University and an Academy of International Business Fellow. Professor Bill was the founding chair of the FIU Department of International Business from 2018 to 23, after chairing the Department of Management and International Business from 2015 to 18. He is the editor of AIB Insights, president of the Consortium of Undergraduate International Business Education, and a past chair of the Academy of Management International Management Division. Professor Bill has published over 50 articles in top-tier journals, along with numerous other publications. His research focuses on how multinational corporations interact with local stakeholders, particularly focusing on reputation-related issues. We are honored to have you, sir. I would request my colleague to welcome sir with a bouquet. Our next speaker in this session will be Professor Elizabeth L. Rose. Professor Rose is a visiting senior research fellow, having previously been a professor of international business at University of Leeds. Her home institution is the Indian Institute of Management, Udaipur, India, where she holds a research chair professorship in business policy and strategy. Professor Rose's work has appeared in a variety of top-tier journals, including the Journal of International Business Studies, Strategic Management Journal, and Journal of World Business. She is an elected fellow of the Academy of International Business. She is co-editor of the Academy of Management Collections, the Academy of Management's newest journal, and served on the editorial team for the Journal of International Business Studies as a member of the Research Methods Advisory Committee. She's also an associate editor of AIB Insights. Professor Rose is the 2019 WAIB Women of the Year. It is our pleasure to have you among us, ma'am. I would request my colleague to welcome ma'am with a bouquet. Our next speaker for the session will be Professor Pavan Budhwar. Professor Budwar is the 50th anniversary professor of International HRM at Aston Business School and the Associate Deputy Vice Chancellor International at Aston University, UK, and has served as the head of Aston Business School from 2020 to 23. He is the co-editor-in-chief of the Human Resource Management Journal, and he is globally known for his research in the field of strategic and international HRM and emerging markets with a specific focus on India. He has published over 160 articles in leading journals and has also written and/or co-edited over 30 books. He has served as an advisory to the Commonwealth Commission for 6 years and a co-editor-in-chief of the British Journal of Management for 7 years. He is a fellow of the Academy of Social Sciences UK, the Higher Education UK, and the British Academy of Management. He has received numerous awards for his contributions to the field of business and management, including the International Federation of Scholarly Management Award in 2022 for exceptional services to the management field worldwide and the British Academy of Management Medal for Research Leadership in 2021. We are honored to have you among us today, sir. I would request Nilanjana to present the bouquet to sir. Our next speaker is Professor Alan W. Bird. He is a senior professor at the Goa Institute of Management, India, and has served as the president of the Kozai Group, Inc. since 2001. From 2009 to 2019, he was the Darla and Frederick Brodsky Trustee Professor in Global Business at Northeastern University. Before that, he was the Aishi Shibusawa Sigo Arai Professor of Japanese Studies and served as Director of the International Business Institute and the International MBA program at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. He has held visiting professorships at institutions including Ricoh University in Japan, Columbia University, the Montreal Institute of International Studies, Seinajoki University of Applied Sciences in Finland, Osaka International University, the National Defense Academy in Japan, and many more. Professor Bird teaches courses in global leadership development, intercultural management, international negotiations, and intercultural and global leadership assessment. He has authored, co-authored, or edited 9 books or over 40 book chapters and more than 60 journal articles. His professional services include serving as president of the Association of Japanese Business Studies and holding leadership roles in the Academy of Management. We are honored to have you here with us, sir. I would request Nilanjana to present a bouquet to sir. Our next speaker is Professor Vijay Pereira. He is a distinguished professor of international and strategic human capital management and serves as the department chair of the People and Organizations Department at NEOMA Business School, France. Previously, he was the associate dean at the University of Wollongong in Dubai. Professor Pereira is the editor-in-chief of the International Studies of Management and Organization Journal, the associate editor for the Journal of Business Research, and the Global Real Impact editor for the Journal of Knowledge Management. He also serves on the editorial and advisory boards of the Production and Operations Management Journal and the Journal of Management Studies, both listed in the Financial Times ranking. With a strong record of attracting research funding, Professor Pereira has published extensively with over 150 publications, including more than 20 special issues and 10 books. His work has appeared in leading international journals such as Human Resource Management, Academy of Management Perspectives, Academy of Management Discoveries, and the Journal of Business Ethics. We are honored to have you here, sir. I would request my colleague to present a bouquet to sir. Our next speaker for this session will be Professor Justin D. Simon. Dr. Simon is an associate professor of management at the University of Alabama. His research focuses on innovative personality assessment as well as issues related to research methodology, psychometrics, and statistics. Professor Simon's work has appeared in some of the top journals in the field, including the Journal of Management, Organizational Research Methods, and Journal of Applied Psychology. Professor Simon is currently serving as an associate editor at Organizational Research Methods and was previously an associate editor at the Journal of Organizational Behavior. He also served on the editorial review board for journals at the Journal of Management and Journal of Business and Psychology. Professor Simon is a regular contributor to the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis, also serving as an advisory board member and associate editor for short courses. Additionally, he serves on the executive committee of the Research Methods Division of the Academy of Management. We are pleased to have you here, sir. I would request my colleague to present a bouquet to sir. Last but not least, our next speaker will be Professor Suma Atre. Professor Atre's main research interests lie in the field of economics of innovation and international economics, and she has published over 50 papers on these subjects. Her current research focuses on identifying the barriers to technology transfer from universities, the financing of research and development, understanding the rising use of trade secrets, and the determinants of the demand for intellectual property instruments. In the area of international economics, she is interested in the impulses for internationalization and its use as a tool for technology search and technological acquisition by Indian and Chinese firms. Professor Atre serves on the editorial board of several academic journals, including Research Policy, Industrial and Corporate Change, Perspectives on Globalization and Development, International Journal of Technological Learning, Innovation and Development, and Multinational Business Review. She has consulted for international policy bodies such as the World Intellectual Property Organization and the European Commission. Additionally, she is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts and the Academy of Social Sciences, both based in the UK. We are honored to have you, ma'am. I would request my colleague to present a bouquet to you. The moderator of this afternoon session will be Professor Sumit K. Kundu. Professor Kundu is the James K. Batten Eminent Scholar Chair in International Business, Associate Dean for CIBER and International Affairs, and Director of CIBER at Florida International University. A distinguished scholar in international business, he specializes in emerging market multinationals, international new ventures, and the theory of multinational enterprise. Professor Kundu has made significant contributions through his extensive teaching, leadership role, and impactful research. His recent publications explore topics such as family firm internationalization and platform-based internationalization of smaller firms, and authority in global strategy and international business. Professor Kundu's expertise enriches academic and professional discussions alike. It is a pleasure to have you, sir. I would request Nilanjana to present a bouquet. Without further delay, I would like to hand over the session to our moderator, Professor Kundu. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to all of you. It's a delight and pleasure to welcome you to the 10th INDAM conference. And this afternoon, we have a very important session which impacts all of us to publish. And of course, as a syndrome, we know in our profession, publish or perish. So here we have, a distinguished set of panelists who represents a plethora of very well-known journals. And some of the journals are premier journals in the field. And what I've done this afternoon is to raise some questions. And each of the panelists will be given about 2 to 3 minutes to respond to those questions. And then once those questions are done, I want the participants to ask questions. After all, at the end of the day, this is a session dedicated to you. So you have the golden opportunity to ask questions to this distinguished editors-in-chiefs, senior editorial team on a variety of questions as it relates to your research. So let me begin this afternoon by posing a very simple question. I know you will present a variety of journals, So please say a few words about your journal, the scope of its activities, the contributions solicited, and the type of papers that you have seen being accepted in the past year or two. So I'm going to start with Justin with our 2 to 3 minutes. Yes, please.
Is this on? Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. So I currently represent Organizational Research Methods. Organizational Research Methods is a methodological journal, as the name would imply. And generally, we look to publish work that will enhance organizational research by making sure that the methodology and the statistics are being used appropriately, are being advanced, and are going to be useful for a wide range of organizational scholarship. So a lot of people believe that it's primarily a management journal, but we also accept contributions from marketing, from accounting, from finance, from anything that relates to organizational scholarship. ORM is kind of a unique journal in terms of the way that you make a contribution. You make a contribution essentially to researchers as opposed to practitioners, and to methods as opposed to theory. But you can't have methods without theory, and you can't test theory without methods. And so you cannot ignore theory, and you cannot ignore other parts of the field. You really do need to focus on a contribution that has breadth for as much of organizational scholarship, as many subdisciplines as possible. I previously represented a journal of organizational behavior as associate editor. JOB is slightly different. It is a more traditional journal in terms of the fact that they want a strong theoretical contribution. They also focus a lot on context of research. So not just what is the contribution, but what is the contribution within this context, and if possible, how that contribution might cross context, or how the context might shape how we interpret the contribution of the article. So for ORM, it's really making a contribution to the way that research is done, to try to improve the field by improving researchers. And JOB, on the other hand, is kind of more traditional in terms of the contribution being how the theory and the empiricism will advance organizational behavior within that subdiscipline. Although with the caveat that we also valued the idea of context, and we valued linkages between organizational behavior and other subdisciplines within management.
Thank you. Bill.
Okay, hello, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. So my name is Bill Newberry. I'm editor of a journal called AID Insights. So the Academy of International Business has 3 journals. They have 2 that are very academic in nature. The Journal of International Business Studies, which I believe Alan's going to talk about in just a second, and the Journal of International Business Policy, 2 fantastic journals. Then the 3rd journal, which of course is fantastic too. my associate editor, deputy editor, Beth, is of course going to keep me in line here. So this journal is, the scope of this journal, the aim of this journal is to publish applied research. So if you think of these academic journal articles, and they have one paragraph at the end of the article that says, and this can apply to practitioners, and it's so general that no practitioner is ever going to be able to use this advice. So generally they are, right? I mean, we take that, our focus is taking that paragraph, and that's the focus of our articles. And so our goal is to develop applied insights that practitioners can use. They could be any type of stakeholder. They could be, policymakers, business people, can even be written for faculty, teachers, but the idea is, it's applied research. We also often talk about these written TED Talks. So the focus isn't on a theoretical contribution. The focus is on actionable insights that actually can be used. Our articles are shorter, about 2,500 words in scope, so about, a quarter of a normal journal article. They're written without, some references, but without a reference for every sentence, without, and in a plain spoken language that, if you could give it to your MBA student and they would understand, you could give it to your CEO or manager and they would understand. So it's a very different type of writing. It's a very different focus, but it's one that we think is very, very necessary when we think of all this great research we do, but we want to get it out to the people, and this is the way to do it. And so I think that's my short introduction.
Thank you, Bill.
We'll see if it works. Thank you. This is my tech support right here. Journal of International Business Studies is the premier journal focused on international business and that discipline. When you submit or consider submitting to the Journal of International Business Studies, keep in mind that we have three things we're looking for. First of all, a clear focus on international business, both theory and practice. We tend to emphasize theory to a great extent, but we are also very concerned with understanding international business practice. And that should be the concern. Is my paper focused on an international business topic with theory? The second thing we look for is a contribution. One of the challenges of publishing in JIBS is that we also look for a contribution to the field. And if they're coming from, say, strategy or marketing, that contribution also has to be to that particular field. Now that may sound challenging. I don't think it's as challenging as some people view if you're focused on international business. The third thing we look for is the quality of the writing. Writing that is not at the highest level will not lead to a rejection at the journal, but there will be lots of encouragement and work to help you bring writing up to the standard it should be. And the reason for that is that as social scientists, we don't deal in numbers and equations as much as we deal in words. Those who deal in numbers and equations can be precise. We don't write E equals MC squared, or we write E equals MC squared. We don't write E is approximately MC squared. But when we write using words, we need to be precise, and that's one of the challenges. And it's not just a challenge for non-native speakers, it's a challenge for native speakers as well. Are we clear about it? And so I would just encourage you as you look to the Journal of International Business Studies to give thought to, is my article focused on an international business theory or topic? Is it making a contribution? And have I paid attention to the craft of writing?
I represent the journal called ISMO, also known as the International Studies of Management and Organization. Took over last 3 years, and at that time it was a 49-year-old journal, and last 3 years we've crossed 50 years. And as the first word in the journal suggests, international, I think the focus of me looking at the board and whether it represents truly international scholars. So I invited top scholars from across the world to represent them on our advisory board, one of them being Farooq Contractor, who's a lifetime member at INDAM. So I think in the last 3 years, a lot has been done. I've done 2 editorials in 2022 and 2023, really looking at what has happened in the last 50 years and where are we headed in terms of the topics. So those interested, especially young scholars, doctoral scholars, the history at ISMO has been that we encourage you, along with your supervisor, to submit, your work. Really, we support young scholars, and over the years, that has been our ethos at ISMO. It's slowly gaining traction in terms of the ranking. There's been a strong ABS2, has continued to be ABS2 over the years, the British ranking, and continues to be a strong B in the Australian ranking, apart from other European rankings. So I think the future looks very good. Do refer to my two editorials in 2022 and 2023, clearly identifying what ISMO has stood for and where it is heading in the future. So this January, I got another 3 years mandate to continue to push this journal. The focus again has been how do we encourage younger scholars, especially from emerging countries, to submit their work. We are quite sympathetic about that, alongside with strong values of being a good paper in terms of problematizing, contextualizing, theorizing, and so on and so forth. So we don't compromise on those qualities. That said, we encourage younger scholars going forward to apply. We have 5 special issues. One of them is dedicated to the INDAM and the topic of INDAM here. So that will be coming out next month very soon. So keep an eye out on that. The second, very quickly, Sumit, is the journal that I represent is the Journal of Knowledge Management. As the term suggests, anything broadly defined as knowledge management, that is also a journal that has a very high impact factor, almost 11, and I am the global real impact editor. No other business journal has a global real impact editor. What that means is that papers at the last stages come to me, and I identify and help authors identify impact. Okay, and so that helped us a lot to grow in double digits in terms of the impact itself. So again, broadly defined, anything that is knowledge management, Journal of Knowledge Management is where you probably need to send your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay.
Namaste. This is where you're supposed to say namaste. I'm trying to speak when I'm awake. Working. Yeah. Okay, I'm here mainly representing Academy of Management Collections. How many people have heard of Academy of Management Collections? Woohoo! Get better every single year. We're a new journal. We've been publishing for 2.5 years. Part of there are 7 journals that are published by the Academy of Management. Some are in the stratosphere. We're not yet, but we will be. Basically, what we publish is very curated lit reviews, where the bulk of the story is told through papers that have been previously published within the Academy of Management group of journals. It's kind of a quirky way to set up a journal. I must say, I was not involved in that part. But I'm delighted to say that we've gone from 2.5 years ago, well, a year ago, really scrambling and hoping we'd have something to publish for the next issue, to now having a bit of a backlog. So, but the thing is that it's we're not in any of the rankings yet, but it's very much this is a journal that has the backing of the Academy of Management, so it is highly likely to move up in the world. So it's getting in the ground floor now. Basically, what we're looking at is taking 10 to 20 journals that have been previously published by the Academy of Management, journal articles, and curating a story. So essentially think of it as the curating essay plus the collection of previously published journals. That could be the basis for a good part of a doctoral seminar. We argue that yes, practitioners might read our journal, but I don't think they will. But I think the way I think of it very much is this is an opportunity to put your stamp on a particular topic and have it very accessible to doctoral students. So if you're thinking of starting in a new area, of learning about a new area, this going to Academy of Management Collections is a great opportunity. Do macro, micro, the whole 9 yards. And if you have questions, I'd be really happy to talk to you about it. The other journal, I just want to give a quick shout,
Sure.
is Review of International Business and Strategy. And this is a journal, take everything Alan said, but we're not as picky. So essentially, it's a journal that focuses on international business and strategy. We worked hard on that title. Very, very interested in having submissions from this part of the world and dealing with issues from this part of the world. There just has to be some level of strategy involved and a crossing of a border or two. So again, happy to, and this is I'm co-editor of this with Hussein Ronald at Adelaide.
Thank you, Beth.
Good afternoon. I'll briefly talk about the 3 journals. But before I do that, could you please raise your hand? How many of you read the submission guidelines of a journal before you submit?
Oh, that's pretty good. How many of you read them carefully?
How many of you regularly read the aims and objectives of the journal? And the last one, how many of you regularly read the editorials written by the editors? Okay, the last one is really, really important. Because any change coming to any journal, the editors will write a short editorial. And if you are not very up to date with that, most likely there will be a mismatch. And the paper will be. So I'll briefly talk about the Human Resource Management Journal. 3+ decades old, one of the leading journals in the field. Traditional journal initially talking about the practical aspect of research because it was supported by the professional body. Over the years, it has become a strong empirical research-based journal where we are looking at theoretical contributions, but we are also looking at practical implications. Number of unique things. Okay. So we have number of different types of articles we are looking for. The traditional empirical studies and so on, that still is the dominant mode of submission we receive. Then we have something called as registered reports, okay, which is a common thing in psychology journals, but less so in human resource, in employment relations, and those kinds of journals. Registered reports is where you submit a proposal when you have started thinking of a project and are pretty close to start data collection. So you submit that, we'll review it. If we like the proposal, we'll make a commitment if all goes well, even if the results are not exciting. Okay, so think about it. We have done an editorial, you can find out what a registered report is, in particularly for doctoral students. The second one, we have a unique feature which we call as provocation piece, where not miles away from Academy of Management Discoveries, but very different, where you have come across an area which is rapidly emerging, but there is not a massive amount of research. Okay? So again, you submit a proposal, and based on that, we make a decision and we take it from there. We are interested in review articles. That means all journals are interested in review articles now. So feel free to do that. The last one is we are also interested, last 2 things, we are also interested in anything exciting you have done in the area of methods. Okay? Where you say we challenge something which was well established and we are proposing something new. So we have a methodology corner. We look forward to that as well. And about a month ago, we have ventured into looking at human resource management in SMEs. Because historically, people talked about in SMEs, we don't talk about formal HR. Okay. So that's about the kind of submissions we receive. We are open to any methodology. We are open to possible theories and so on. We will not entertain your manuscript it's purely related to OP and has nothing to do with HR. Right? So if it is dominantly HR, and there is some element of OP, perfectly fine. We will also not entertain your manuscript. It's purely based on students. Okay? So hence, read instructions, read the aims and objectives, read the latest editorials. Very briefly about the British Journal of Management. It's a broad church general management journal which entertains all sorts of areas, all sorts of methodologies, and they are primarily looking for theoretical contributions, a bit of practical implications. And the related, which is the sister journal for British Journal of Management, is International Journal of Management Reviews, okay? Which is pretty nice outlet, not AMR, but a bit different. Okay? Few things on that. Lots of you are still getting carried away with bibliometrics. Okay? Most of the editors are shying away from entertaining submissions related to bibliometrics because it's not helping to make useful contributions. So if you are thinking of one, please look around what's happening. Okay? Second, of course, it's a review journal, so they will not entertain anything empirical. But the key here is they are looking for solid conceptual theoretical contributions, which is not easy, but there are lots of editorials written. About a couple of months ago, Jibs wrote a major piece on possible aspects of a paper, including what a good contribution looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. So my name is Suma Atreya, and I sit on 3 journal editorial boards, but I'll be talking, I think, maybe only of 2. I'm going to leave out the JIBP. So the first one I'd like to talk about is Industrial and Corporate Change. It's published by the Oxford University Press and is currently in its 33rd volume. So it's an old journal. And it's a journal that I am particularly attached to because one of my supervisors set it up. And somehow I have read it since its first issue right up to now when I'm also an editor there. It produces 6 issues annually, and regular issues typically feature 8 research papers of about 10,000 words each. So this gives you a frequency of how much gets published each year. And since 2021, there has been 1 issue devoted to macroeconomics. It has an impact factor of 2.8 and a 5-year impact factor of 3.8. The scope of the journal is that it's committed to presenting and interpreting corporate organization and change. So these are very broad terms. We are not saying we are contributing to this area or that area in this journal. But anything that broadly relates to corporate organization and change, innovation, industrial structure and dynamics. But the most important part is not only the object, but also the method. And I think what is really unique about ICC is that it allows you to draw on a variety of disciplines, including economics, management, history, political science, and sociology. So if you think about the founding editorial team, which was Giovanni Dossi, David Teese, and Nick von Tunzelman, they all come from very different orientations. So Giovanni Dossi was a professor of economics in Rome. Nick von Tunzelman, who was my supervisor, was an economic historian. And David Teese is, of course, he teaches in the Haas School of Business. So he's a straightforward strategy scholar. So that interdisciplinarity has marked this journal, and the editors strive to publish theories that have sound theory and appropriate methods. This is going to be the mantra of every journal because this is the basic requirement of a good argument. But the only thing is we want to have clear implications for the economy, for organizations, management, public policy, or society. So these are the different ways in which industrial and corporate change impacts the world around us. I think that this is a special journal, and there are a few things that set us apart from other technology management journals. So if you think about our competitors in this space, it's research policy, it's technovation, it's technological forecasting and social change. And the things that set us apart from these competitor journals is that there's a taste for interesting research. So the ICC is not, it is very skeptical about very formulaic hypothesis testing. So that's a different approach. And there's a desire to push both theory and empirical understanding, not just one. So, you would not have a paper, or you wouldn't allow a paper which says, oh, I know about this theory, but hey, I'm going to show this to you with Chinese data or, Italian data or something. We want that the new data also comes with some kind of addition to theory. Okay. It is very serious about whatever method you use. So there's a multiplicity of methods upon which papers are based and published in this journal. It could be quantitative. You could have a qualitative methodology, or just do modeling. That's also acceptable, or appreciative theory, based on case studies and inductively building a theory. The desire is to show understanding of the context is not just a place for plain case studies. So that is really important to the mission of the journal. There is interest in important facts and regression structures, identification where appropriate, depending on what is your intended contribution. So when we desk reject papers, we are looking for whether there's a potential contribution or not. Okay, so that is a first. But if you look at the journal, as long as you're rigorous, there's an acceptance of various qualitative and historical approaches. We are not constrained in our acceptance or rejection of a paper by any other institutional or disciplinary limitations in the purpose. So purpose is the purpose of how it supports your argument. Okay? So those are some things that set ICC apart. And ICC, I've taken over as editor of the Eurasia region. And mainly the manuscripts that come to me are from emerging regions and emerging Europe. This is the main mandate for me. I have noticed that not only are submissions less frequent than from other geographies, at least from, submissions from India, but also that the rejection rate in this group is a bit higher because either articles are not properly framed or their argument is not supported by the right method or a combination of both. So I really wish to work with INDAM to make this better. And that is one of the reasons I agreed to do this presentation. The second journal that I'd like to talk about is the Journal of International Business Policy, which is one of the triad of the AIB journals. I have been area editor of this journal since its founding team a few years ago. And the aim of JIBP is to be the world's leading journal of policy-relevant research on international business issues, where scholars in IB and neighboring fields publish their best work and policy actors turn to the journal for impactful policy insights. Within just 7 years of founding, we already have an impact factor of 5.9, which is really very impressive. So the journal started in 2016, and the first issue was, I think, early 2017. And by 2023, we have a journal impact factor of 5.9, which is a little lower than JIPS, but comparable to other journals like the Global Strategy Journal or even IBR, International Business Review, which is... So how have we done this? I think the editorial mission has been first and foremost to create an identity for what does international business policy look like. Because international business, of course, affects policy and is affected by policy, but as a field of study, that how does international business and policy interact? This is a new thing. So the first job was to create this kind of defining of boundaries of international business research, which might qualify as policy research. And here we try to stress on public policy actions and public policy challenges in terms of how they impact on international management. We also have the mission to bridge different communities. So what looks like policy in India is different from what looks like policy in Europe. And part of the mission is to be at conferences like this in order to bridge that, that divide. And lastly, we have tried to involve policy actors in publishing and commenting in the journal. So I welcome you to ask me any questions of about both of these journals. And of course, more than that, I welcome informal inquiries about submissions and whatever I can do to help better papers come from this geography and to make its mark in these journals. Thank you.
So that was a great introduction by all the editors of a variety of journals. So as we know that when you write a paper, there are two elements, the front end of the paper and the back end of the paper. The front of the paper is where the theoretical contribution is important. And the back end of the paper is the methodological contribution. So I'm going to frame my question to the panelists out here that in research, we always emphasize to PhD students the issue of rigor versus relevance. How do you balance rigor and relevance when you're sending a paper to JIBS or JIBP, or AOM collections, so a variety of journals or GOB? And what I like to hear from the panelists is that this rigor vis-a-vis relevance, how does it play out in the context of theoretical contribution and methodological contribution? So because the audience needs to understand, because this is the Indian audience, they are learning from you all that yes, when you're crafting a paper and you are talking about a powerful narrative, which will definitely, be a very unique thing for the action editor or the reviewers. So that balance has to be made. It has to be rigorous research, absolutely. And it has to be relevant. And talking about relevance, I'm also going to ask the question, does context matter? I mean, when papers are written by the Indian authors, they tend to basically focus on India. So this is a multi-folded question. So it's open to the panel. Anybody in the panel would like to begin talking about rigor versus relevance with respect to theoretical contribution as it relates to hypothesis development, as well as methodological contribution. Because nowadays we talk about mixed methods, qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, FSQCA, so on and so forth. Right, please.
When we talk about rigor, what we're talking about is often precision or detail. There's a great article by von Nordenflick in Organization Science published in 2023. If you can't find it on your own, drop me an email. I'll be happy to send it to you. As I recall, the title of that article is Clean Up Your Theory. When I talk about precision and rigor, let me give an example from my own personal writing and an article that took me 18 years to publish. I'm not the only culprit. I had co-authors. We were interested in a construct called trigger events. And I'm not going to present my article here, but defining a trigger event, which is an interruption in cognitive flow, occupied much of that time. We wrote the article, we wrote drafts, we wrote articles, we submitted them, it came back. We found it extremely difficult. You can go read the article and see why it's difficult. But the point is, we were unclear in our own minds as to what a trigger event was. Now, in fairness, Carl Weick is one of the first people who mentions trigger events in his book, Sense Making in Organizations, and he has a throwaway sentence there that says, "This is too difficult to define, so I'm moving on." That should have been a clue that we ought to have moved on as well. But my point is, when you identify a construct, you have to be able to clearly define it, which is to put a fence around it so that people know this is inside the fence and this is outside the fence. And then you have to be able to clearly delineate or identify what are the characteristics or elements of that construct. We can think about, for example, a construct called organizational commitment, which when it was initially presented, when it was initially introduced, identified 3 elements of organizational commitment. Subsequently, that was refined, and now we tend to, and we talk about organizational commitment only to talk about emotional organizational commitment. And that reflects a refining of the process of clarifying a increasing of the rigor of that. I would encourage you, when you start writing a paper and you have an idea or a concept. I came up with one yesterday while I was talking with colleagues, which I'm currently calling weak functionality or institutional functionality. I've been looking at India for the last 4 years, and people have been telling me it's an emerging market. It's not an emerging market. You can't be the 4th largest economy and still be emerging. You can be developing and growing, but I distract myself. But the point is, people say emerging markets have weak formal institutions, and India does not have weak formal institutions. It actually has very strong formal institutions. I know because I've been victimized by them as a foreigner trying to get an employment visa. But it does have weak functionality of the institution. Strong control, but weak functionality. They're inefficient, ineffective. This is something that I haven't seen discussed in the institutional literature. But if I want to pursue that idea, I have really got to sharpen my focus. What do I mean precisely? I'm still scrambling for words. That's what I'm talking about. Rigor is being that precise that we know, and it may take time and you may have to work through multiple iterations, but that should be your end goal.
Thank you. Yes.
I will say something, I'll try to be a little brief here, but when you are writing, it's very important to try to balance rigor with relevance. And you might have to make decisions based on the journal that you have submitted to and whether they value one over the other. But even within a journal, it's going to depend on who you have as an associate editor and who you have as your reviewers as to what that correct balance might look like. However, I would also argue that this trade-off between the two of them only applies when writing. When conducting your research, you need to be thinking about rigor and relevance. You need to have both, and they need to be mutually reinforcing, because rigor and relevance are, neither one of them is sufficient for making a contribution, but both are necessary for making a contribution. So a lot of times this gets talked about in terms of theory versus method, and theory is incredibly important. It is how we understand our world. It is how we generalize things, both in terms of external validity as well as in terms of the thoughtfulness of the constructs and what they apply to. Without theory, what we're doing is completely meaningless. However, without methodology, we're just talking in circles, and theory is just a bunch of pointy-headed academics discussing high-level ideas and not being able to prove any of them. You have to have both, and they have to be integrated with each other so that the theory drives the methodology, and the methodology can inform the theory. And that's all I have to say.
So I want to talk a little bit about the context part of your question.
Sure.
So in international business journals in particular, context is the key. And I think that's what we're interested in. I do, because we know India is not the same as France. Institutions are different. The context matters a lot in how you do business and so on, and all the international business questions. I do want to put a plug in. If you were at our PDW we did 2 days ago, you would have heard that we're doing a special issue of AIB Insights on international business in South Asia, which includes for some reason, India. So, the deadline for the special issue is in 3 months. AIB Insights articles are short, 2,500 words. So this is a very doable thing. And I think, this is where your chance to show how the Indian context matters in the international business field. Because India does have a different context, and in IB, this is a central question. I will say too, the rigor, even though our journal, the relevance is our key thing, you can't just make up recommendations off the top of your head. You have to be very rigorous in how you develop them, what evidence you use to develop them, the process of doing it. So even in a journal which has a focus of relevance, rigor is still key as well.
Just to add a few more things to that. So on the rigor side, start looking at building on what Alan shared. So rigor in your conceptual explanation. How precise, how nicely, how focused, how clearly you can explain that. Rigor in your theorization. You are picking up a theory and you are theorizing and underpinning your deconstructs and so on. So how rigorously you are able to do that. Rigor in your methodology. Okay. So again, we know certain phenomenon needs a specific kind of methods to explain and so on. How solid, how robust you are. Rigor in your explanation of results and so on. So you can see it cuts across many, many key aspects of the paper. Okay, so keep an eye on that. The relevance, bring in the audience. Okay? Who is the audience of your research? Okay? What kind of discussions are happening in the journal? How perhaps you are linking with them and sharing things based on your findings so that they are relevant. That takes us to context. I'll say context alone is not good enough to sell your research. Okay? Historically, what happened, but perhaps use context to highlight the context specificities of your research. And in this case, India, within India, there are so many remarkable, unique, indigenous aspects which needs to be highlighted, and they can lead to some novel contributions. Okay, curing methods and so on. You understand?
I will talk about what I term as the golden thread. The problematizing. Is this a real problem? Who is this? What is this problem? How does this problem affect? Who does it affect? In what way does it affect? Who does it affect? Yeah, that needs to be very, very robust. How does that then take us to the context? Is this problem specific, more or less, or the same in a particular context? And then how does all of these two, the problematizing and the contextualizing, firmly sit within a theoretical argument? What is the theory that binds it together? What is the theoretical foundation that, you see the golden thread running through all of these things? The problem that you identify, the context in which you want to show the problem, portray the problem, why is it important, who is it important for, and how do you bring it together, how you glue it together theoretically? What is the basis? And then that golden thread is very important when it comes, because that would then lead to your method where you are going back with strong data to get answers to the problem you have identified. And that automatically, when you do that part of the rigor, you get the relevance, which is the impact. So I've known a lot of scholars and a lot of doctoral students as well, who complete all of this and then look out for the impact or the relevance. No, it needs to start when you're problematizing, when you're theorizing. And the relevance is an outcome of that rigor, basically. And so that narrative, that how do you bind it all together as one compelling story, that portrays all of these, will be your contribution and will be your relevance.
You guys haven't left me much to say. I think but two things that I think haven't necessarily been covered. Methodology, look, I like crunching numbers. I really enjoy that part of the paper. I'm a good theory tester, not a great theory developer, but that's why I have co-authors. But you've got to make sure that you are doing the methodology correctly. You can't be sloppy. You know, your measures have to actually match up with what you're trying to hypothesize about, because that's glaringly obvious if it doesn't happen. Do the basics right. Don't just jump into the fancy black box modeling. Understand your data before you jump into it. This is for those of you doing quant. But the other thing is, it's not, doing this well is not going to be enough for most journals. It's not going to sell the paper. And I find junior scholars tend to figure, I'm going to do this fancy method, I'm going to do this great analysis, and I'm going to do 10 sets of robustness testing. Don't do that. That's not what's going to sell the paper. What's going to sell the paper is the front end, and the pains me to say it, but the analysis is more supportive. The front end has to be really good. The other thing about context, super briefly, you're sitting in a wonderful context, a fascinating context. I mean, I've been in India for several years. I would never write about something about India without an Indian co-author, because I know I don't understand it. But rather than saying, oh, nobody's ever done this in India, turn that around and think about why India is a fantastic place to study a broader issue, because that's going to make your paper much, much more powerful.
Thank you, Beth. Suma?
Yeah, so very little for me to add, except that very often when we are working from contexts like India or even some countries in Africa like Nigeria, Ghana, what we find is that the data which we find around us does not quite match up to those standards of rigor, and so then this debate kind of doesn't go anywhere. So my way out of this has often been to push whatever data is there and to make very clear that this is the only data that is available. But as Beth just said, everything depends on the argument. So this is, we are talking about relevance and rigor, but these are all parts of a whole. And the whole has to be a balance. I mean, anyone who's done painting knows this. You assign different proportions to whatever you want to show. And so for me, the argument is always central. I mean, why does it matter that we look at this? And then I might accept that, well, the data are not up to it, so I will use the methods that are suited to the data I have. But you have to make that case, and that's also part of being rigorous. Yeah. So that's the small thing I wanted to add, just based on our context.
So some of the important lessons we're learning, which is that Indian context is interesting. There are nuances out here. Indian data might be very unique, but as Beth mentioned, that the front end theorizing is very important. You have to understand theories, the theories organization, whatever the theories you are learning, and to bring that into your writings. Because when we read papers from the Indian scholars, I find that they are very good with statistics and good with data. In fact, I'm working on a paper with some folks, and we are looking at machine learning into the paper. And it's a great paper for organizational research methods, ORM, definitely. Because, but then the question came up that what should be our target journal? Should it be broadly for a management audience? This paper we're working on with machine learning right now. So I think the important lesson is that, yes, you have to understand and write in a way that is broadly appealing to the mass audience. If you're writing a technical piece, the reviewers and maybe also the action editor may be lost. It happens to me also. Some of the papers I review, some of the methodologies I don't understand very well. So obviously then I have to restrict my comments to the things which I do understand. In all fairness to everybody, right? So I think a sincere advice to all my young scholars and young researchers is that please take the time to understand theory. Now, as it turns out, Indian institutions of higher education, clearly they are struggling on the front end. I can see that. Now, I travel to all the IIMs all the time, and I hear that they have not been trained very well in the theory. They're very good or adept because part of their engineering background, they are from IITs, so they understand statistics and things very well. So I think we need to change that culture. Okay, so I think what we're hearing is that it's a balancing act. I raised the question of rigor and relevance because it's important. I mean, this is journals where if you are striving to publish, you have to find a way to balance that act between research has to be rigorous, but it has to be relevant also. So one final question from my end, if I open to the audience, is about implications. And of course, we write a paper and we write only half a paragraph on managerial implications. And to me, I'm surprised that you do a high, heavy-duty empirical analysis, and then you're trying to understand, and trying to communicate to the broader audience by writing half a page or a page on implications. Are you doing justice to paper? Some thoughts.
I think it's the classic, so what? When you've done your research, you find your findings, you compare it with your findings with the findings of previous literature, and you ask questions, so what? And you can't separate contribution and impact from implications, because the so what question helps you to do that. Keep asking, it impacts these people, there's an implication on these stakeholders. So to what type, to what extent? And I go back to saying that you have already begun your journey when you're problematizing, and you don't look for it at the end. And so implications, I think, are very important to then repeat yourself and be specific to say that these are the implications on A, B, C. So that's very important. Which stakeholders, which group of scholars, what part of the literature, what is the theory? So the implications are several. It's on literature, on theory, on practice, on policy. You need to list these very clearly, and don't list this for the sake of listing. I've seen papers at the end and dear editor, you said this and we have done it. Yeah, but is it making sense to you in the first place? If not, how will it make sense to us as editors, leave alone the reviewers who are enemy number one? So please look at implications when you begin your study, and don't look for them at the end because the journal needs it.
Alan.
A good research paper is not a magic act. And by that, I mean, you don't make the lady disappear and then reappear and go, ta-da. The question after the lady appears in a research article is, as Vijay said, so what? Why should I care? Two cautions. The first caution is from statistics, don't extrapolate beyond the region of fit. Your findings tell you some things. Be careful not to make statements that go beyond what your findings allow you to say. If you did a cross-sectional study, I don't want to see the word cause anywhere in the implications, because you didn't demonstrate that. You demonstrated some relationships. So don't extrapolate beyond the region of fit in your implications. Second, ask yourself this question. Given what I found, how is theory different? Given what I found, what should a manager do? I find those two questions, how is theory different? What should a manager do? Given what I found, will help you identify implications that are meaningful, that logically follow from what you've discovered. And those will have an impact far beyond general statements of world peace.
Yeah, my comment was pretty much taken BJ at the very end. I will say for AIB insights, implications is what the whole journal is about. But in our instructions for the authors, and I think this applies to any journal, but particularly for our journal, we want them in the first paragraph to very clearly indicate, I am developing insights for who, so which stakeholder and what type of insights you're developing. And then we expect that to flow through like a thread throughout the articles that start out, everything else builds towards achieving those implications at the end, those recommendations at the end.
Thank you. Cool.
Number of things. So first one is, let's not confuse contributions versus implications. There is some overlap. So when we are talking about contributions, primarily the academic side and the theoretical side, and perhaps the methodological side as well. For me, the implications come, what's it in the paper, in your findings, for the practitioners, policymakers, and so on. Majority of the journals where we aspire to work or publish are theory-oriented journals, where the implication side is expected, but most likely will not be the deal breaker. It's the contribution side which will be the deal breaker. But if you are into HBR, if you are into California Management Review, if you are into policy and so on, then certainly implications become significantly important. But certainly, as others have shared, think about it from the beginning. If you are pretty serious that you really want to highlight implications of your research or different key stakeholders, then accordingly build the case, the problem, and so on, and do the research and share those.
Be careful not to overclaim your contribution. The fact that you've used a theory doesn't necessarily mean you're rewriting or contributing to the development of that theory. And the other thing is, you do not have to solve all the world's problems in a single article. We're basically each article. I mean, some of you are like, well, I'm sure we'll write, earth-changing articles, or at least academic changing articles. But by and large, we're mostly each putting a little brick into the wall of knowledge. So you don't have to claim that you fixed the whole world. Just stick to what you've actually done and sell that way.
Very good. So now this is the right moment, the opportunity to open up the floor to questions now, please. I'm sure there are lots of questions you have in your mind. They're waiting eagerly to answer your questions. So who's going to volunteer? Oh, so the back. This gentleman also the back. We need more microphones now. Need more microphones to give it to the. So please stand up, bro. Say who you are. Please say your name, your affiliation, and ask the question.
A very good evening to all of you. I am Ajay Kumar Yadav from Mahatma Gandhi Kashi Vidyapith, that is affiliated to AKTU Lucknow. My query is, sir, what is the minimum and maximum time period for a paper published in a reputed journal? This is my general question. I not understand it. I'm very confused. What is the minimum and maximum time period for paper published in a reputed or good journal? Please clarify it.
They won't mind if I speak. Let me do it. So do your part, which is doing a good research, writing a good paper, submit. And then lots of things happen in the backside of the processing, which are at times beyond the control of the editor. Everyone tries hard to make decisions pretty quickly. Okay? But bear with us, and you are part of that. Once you start accepting, you will review, perhaps delays can happen and so on. But most journals and editors try to do it ASAP.
Please, just it.
I will say that there's not a set minimum and there's not a set maximum. The longest that it's ever taken me to publish something is 7 years. Apparently it takes Alan 18 years. But yes, I don't think it's possible to publish a journal article in less than 7 months. And I think 7 months is generally very unrealistic. The reason being that it takes 3 months for your reviews to come back. You'll have 3 more months to modify them. And assuming everything goes perfectly, you're gonna have another month to do the conditional accept. So in the ideal situation, which I have never experienced, maybe some of them have, you were looking at a 7-month minimum. Realistically, journal articles take years to write. If you are talking about the publication process and just the kind of mechanisms behind that, you can break it down into 3 months, 1 month, so forth and so on. But every single paper that you see is the product of probably years of thinking and theorizing and collaborating and planning the methodology and figuring out how to communicate all of that. So I tell my graduate students to plan on a 2.5-year period between idea generation and publication. And sometimes that might be a little bit sooner, and sometimes that might be a lot longer.
But if 15 or 17 years can happen in this, तो हमारी retirement किए जाएगी. Excuse me?
Yeah, so I think you need to understand the backside what happens, yeah? You submit a paper, what happens from there onwards? We are time bound as editors-in-chief. We are time bound to take a decision. Most journals now have a time limit to say a first decision needs to be taken within that period. Now, let's say you're lucky that your paper is now in review. You don't know because the background, we struggle with reviewers. Can I ask you, sir, how many times have you reviewed for a paper in a journal that you have submitted? You submit 2. So you see the letter that was lying for 6 months in R2. Now, what has happened in the background? I had a letter from the author saying, this is unacceptable and you are a reputable journal and it's Taylor and Francis and, frustrated, yes. But my associate editor has sent it to 17 reviewers, yes? And also overlapped with the Christmas period, yeah? And so on and so forth. So there are people who are reviewers who are not paid. There are editors who do it voluntarily. So it's a process. To what extent, my point is, are you contributing to that process? By reviewing, by helping in, also saying, this is my field, I'm happy to review it. You need to be part of that process. Because if you send it out to 17 people who, and believe me, the associate editors spend time to identify the right reviewers. They're on your side. Because if you have reached the stage of reviewing, they want to publish that paper. They don't want to waste their time as well. So it's a process in the background that is very messy, very complex, and it's filled with a lot of challenges.
Fine.
Let me just follow up on what Vijay was saying, because it's useful to understand the timelines. I'm a reviewing editor for JIBS. I get a manuscript to review. I have 3 days to review it to determine whether it goes forward to an area editor who will then send it out to reviewers. So if you hear back from JIBS within 5 days, I can already tell you what the decision was. The decision was you've been best rejected. But the timeline from submission to decision letter, which is either after it's gone through reviewers, which is either a revise and resubmit or a reject at that level. The timeline at JIBS is currently 63 days. And I can't tell you how hard area editors work, how hard reviewers work to try and make that timeline. But if you get a revise and resubmit, you've just added another 3 months to the process for publication, because that's the time that you have to work on it. When it comes back in, it goes back to the reviewers, and so you can see, if you get a manuscript that goes through a couple of revisions, you're easily looking at a year, or you're easily looking at more than a year in all likelihood.
So let's move forward. There's a question from the gentleman.
Hi, this is Upal. So thanks for your insights. So, wanted to check there are, I mean, a lot of, journals that have. How do we narrow down onto which journal? And is there a dipstick mechanism where we can get a quick, view as, whether this journal is relevant or not, instead of going through the, I know you guys go through a lot of pain process to identify it all, but is there a dipstick mechanism to check whether the journal is relevant or not? That's one. Second thing is, in today's world, there are a lot of cloned sites or something that, I mean, I've heard that, good journals have a clone site where fake journals and, people submit and lose money also. So how do we identify that?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know much about the second part, clone sites is the first one for me. But a very easy way to check which journal is to read the mission statement of the journal. Normally that will tell you what are the kind of topics that they're interested in. That's a good first shot, you look at it. It's not surefire, but it'll give you 50% chance that you might hit it. The second way that I have heard people sometimes choose journals is to go through their own bibliography. So if the articles you cite come predominantly from one journal, then the decision is made for you. That's the readership you're interested in, and so they might be interested in what you do.
Bill.
I mean, and the other piece of it is, when you're thinking about your topic, you should probably have a journal or a set of journals in mind. So before you do all the work of writing the paper, when you're thinking about the topic, when you're conceptualizing, do a search and read the missions, as was stated, and look at, which journals match what you're trying to do. And then when you actually build the paper, you need to be writing for the journal, at least to a certain extent, which means you need to be very familiar with what's in the journal. You need to write in the style that journal uses. You need to understand the journal, and you need to really understand what's been published in there. We get papers, not so many anymore, but when we first went to a peer review system, we'd get papers that were a JIB submission. That was just, everything was cut in a quarter. So a mini review, methods, everything was, and that's not what we are. We have a very different writing style. So we can tell if you haven't paid attention to what's we're writing. And every journal kind of has its own style. And so you need to look at that, and that will guide you, but figure out which journal you want before you do the paper as well.
Just to add one important thing, which addresses your second question as well. So try to create a system where there are people who can read your manuscript before you submit. Okay. Now and then, in doubt, ask these people what's their opinion, where the fit is, and so on. But still, you give your own opinion on it, and based on that,
Put that one on.
please switch on.
Sorry. I don't.
So peer review, friendly peer review, in doubt, ask people around. Most likely they'll be able to guide you. The second one is a rapidly emerging. Okay, there also the way out is homework and checking it out and speaking to people. So historically, when I used to co-edit British Journal of Management, regularly someone else will go and create a British Journal of Management. They will even pick up my sign, but the message here is majority of us, we won't charge a single penny. Most of these fictitious journals or clone journals likely to ask you for money. Okay, and straight away you should be asking yourself, what's happening here? But go and check number of other things. The online system and the kind of people dealing and the kind of responses you are getting, trying to figure out many, many more things. But in doubt, please send an email to the managing editor. Okay? It's really important. Don't get carried away, because some of these kind of fictitious and clone journals will make a quick decision, and most likely they will accept your paper as well. But that will not go anywhere. Okay? So it will be quite damaging for you and for scholarship as well. So please keep an eye on what's happening at the moment. It's only increasing. India is hub of predatory journals. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of them. Okay? We need to work together, because this is extremely serious. In our case, we are not playing with the lives of people, highly unlikely. But in the case of medical journals, where the wrong trials are being published, and future researchers are going to base their research on those trials, and that's getting into the system, and based on that, we are going to train future medics. How damaging it can be, but it's happening.
So we'll take the last question, please.
Thank you for the amazing discussions, and there's a lot to learn. I'm Dr. Shalaka Shah from Flame University, Pune. I have a very quick question about the power of a cover letter, because we are all asked to write cover letters, and if you could also tell us what are, like, one or two tips that we need to keep in mind, because I think that's also the first thing that editors are reading, or important people are reading. So anyone, yeah, would be very helpful.
If anybody, one of you can please.
I think I understood your question, and I'm not going to answer it. Instead, I'm going to suggest something that is overlooked by many young scholars. When you submit your manuscript, you can submit a cover letter. I strongly encourage you to pay attention to that opportunity, because that is an opportunity to speak to the editor and the area editor directly. What should you say in the cover letter? Don't repeat the abstract. Instead, I would do several things. One, I would point out how the article I'm submitting fits the aims and scope of the journal. Send a clear message, because it may be clear to you, it may not be clear to the editor. So if you can help them understand that. Two, if you have a distinctive contribution beyond kind of what you say in an intro, highlight that and draw attention to that. What you're doing is cueing the editor and the area editor for things to look at or pay attention to. You're helping train them. Three, if you have had other people read the manuscript, you should identify them. It slows down the review process tremendously if you don't name them, and then the editor sends that out and asks them to review it, and then they come back and say, I can't because I've already seen this manuscript. That's several more days, if not weeks, in the process of get delayed. Or if you have particular people that you think should review the paper that haven't seen it already, then you can recommend that. In JIBS, there's a separate area where you can do it. But in the cover letter, when you submit to JIBS, you can say, we have, I think, 26 area editors right now. You can say, I think this should go to, Jonathan Doe. This fits his area. We pay attention to that. As a reviewing editor, I make a recommendation as to which action editor should give it. And I will definitely pay attention to you. Editors want to publish your paper if it's good. And they want to give you the opportunity to have it published. And so they're likely to respond to those recommendations. And so take advantage of that cover letter.
So on that note, we're going to conclude the session. We're out of time. There's another 3:30. If you want to continue discussion, by all means, do the tea break, So a big round of applause to the panelists for a wonderful insight on publishing in Indian journals.
Thank you. For the session, especially for budding research scholars like us. Thank you, Professor Kundu, for effortlessly moderating this session. I would like to request my colleagues now to felicitate all dignitaries with a small token of appreciation. A big round of applause for Professor William Newbery. A big round of applause for Professor Elizabeth L. Rose. A big round of applause for Professor Suma Athreya. A big round of applause for Professor Pavan Budhwar. A big round of applause for Professor Alan W. Bird. A big round of applause for Professor Vijay Pereira. A big round of applause for Professor Justin D. Simon. And last but not the least, a big round of applause for our moderator, Professor Sumit K. Kundu.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We may now proceed for a short tea break, and we will resume shortly after the break for the industry panel discussion. There is an MSME exhibition and bookstall set up outside. Kindly have a look while having your tea. Thank you, everyone.
Right, thank you.
On behalf of Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, Kolkata, and INDAM Organizing Committee, I again extend a warm welcome to all of you to this informative panel discussion on Agenda for Global Indian Footprints, a Business Perspective. Before we start, I would like to welcome all the dignitaries on the dais. I would like to welcome Shri Rajeshri Gupta, Shri Ajay Bandyopadhyay, Shri Sanjay Budhia, Dr. John Mathai, Shri Chandrasekhar Ghosh, and also Professor Shoykot Banerjee. With great pleasure, I would now like to introduce our esteemed panelists for this session. Today we have four very eminent panelists with us. Firstly, I would like to introduce Sri Rajeshri Gupta. Sri Rajeshri Gupta is the Managing Director of ONGC Videsh Limited and subsidiary of ONGC. Rajeshri Gupta has more than 33 years of wide-ranging experience in supervisory, managerial, and strategic planning capacities in domestic and international operations of ONGC and ONGC Videsh. He has a keen business sense of oil and gas industry, commercial and financial acumen, with mergers and acquisitions, strategic planning, and man management as his core strengths. During his professional career, Sri Gupta worked in the domains of supply chain management, business development, project management, planning and strategy, corporate communications, human resource management, and general administration. He has spent 13 years in ONGC Videsh during its global growth period from 2006 to 2019, working across the globe in diverse geographical and fiscal regimes in business development, merger and acquisitions, and project management of exploration and development projects. As country manager and president of ONGC Videsh's US subsidiary, he set up the Geological and Geophysical Center of Excellence in Houston. On return, he was head of corporate planning and strategy in ONGC Videsh and also headed strategic HR and corporate communication. He was instrumental in framing the international business vision in ONGC's long-term vision document, the Perspective Plan 2030. So we are thrilled to have you over here. Now, I would like to welcome you with a small token of our appreciation. Now, I would like to introduce Sri Sanjay Budhia. Sri Sanjay Budhia is the Managing Director of Pattern Group and is one of the most well-known and popular industrialists in Eastern India. He is known not only for his business skills, but also for his active patronage of many art and cultural events in the city. Shri Budhia wears multiple hats and holds many prominent posts in major industry and social organizations. As the chairman of CII Eastern Region and president Indian Chamber of Commerce, he has contributed significantly in reviving a new spirit in the industrial scenario in the state, a contribution that has been recognized by political and industrial leaders alike. Sir, it is a great pleasure to have you over here today. As a token of gratitude, I would like to welcome you today with a bouquet of flowers. Next, I would like to introduce Sri Ajay Bandyopadhyay. Sri Ajay Bandyopadhyay is presently the Asia Pacific Lead of Climate Advisory of the International Financial Corporation, World Bank Group. In this role, he is responsible for growing IFC's climate investment opportunities in manufacturing, agribusiness, and services sector. Shri Ajay Bandyopadhyay advises large regional companies and MNCs on issues such as decarbonization, energy transition, circular economy, green supply chain, and supports their implementation through climate finance instruments and targeted policies. His experience spans across 17 countries in 5 geographies like Asia, Europe, CIS, Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, where he led projects and programs on diverse themes such as industrial decarbonization, clean energy transition, Paris alignment of large companies, greening of supply chains, green cities, eco-industrial zones, and low carbon policy. On this topic, he has also authored and co-authored several guidebooks and analytical papers for international organizations. Sri Ajay Bandyopadhyay was a member of the multi-donor expert group on green FDI promotion for emerging economics, a consulting member of Niti Aayog's Circular Economy Committee and various leading industry forums of India, such as the CII and also the American Chamber of Commerce in India. It is a great honor to have you here, sir, today, and I would like to welcome you with a small token of appreciation. Now, I would like to introduce Dr. John Mathai. Dr. John Mathai is an accomplished leader in HR, administration, and organizational transformation with extensive experience in employee welfare, industrial relations, and HR policymaking. Currently serving as Member Secretary of Damodar Valley Corporation, he oversees general administration and strategic initiatives. His leadership has been pivotal in DVC's transformation, including the Corporate Vision 2030 for 15,000 MW capacity addition, CRS alignment with SDGs, and successful implementation of national campaigns. Previously, at NTPC, he excelled in HR innovation, stakeholder management, and governance, achieving significant operational efficiencies and spearheading impactful social programs. He has done his MA in Personal Management and Industrial Relations from Mahatma Gandhi University, Kerala. Apart from this, he has also acquired LLB from Delhi University, MBA from Jamia Millia University, New Delhi, and PhD from IIT Delhi. He brings with himself vast knowledge and experience in the field of talent management, industrial relationship, human resource management, and industrial engineering. Sir, we are pleased to have you over here today. I would like to welcome you with a small token of appreciation. The final speaker for our session is Sri Chandrasekhar Ghosh. Sri Chandrasekhar Ghosh is the chairman of Bandhan Group and the founder and former MD and CEO of Bandhan Bank. With over 3 decades of experience in microfinance, banking, and development, he has been a leader in financial inclusion in India. He has transformed Bandhan from an NGO in 2001 to an NBFC in 2006 and finally into an Universal Bank in 2015, the first such transformation in India. Under his leadership, Bandhan Bank has served 3.44 crores customers with over 76,000 employees as of 2024. Sri Chandrasekhar Ghosh holds a master's degree in statistics and has attended the Strategic Leadership Program at Harvard Business School. He has received multiple accolades, including the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2023, Banker of the Year for 2018-19, and CAN-IBN Indian of the Year in 2016. He has held leadership roles in industry bodies like CII and BCCI and contributed to various financial and governance committees. Sir, it is an honor to have you over today. I would like to welcome you with a token of appreciation. Now, with great pleasure, I would like to introduce our session moderator, Professor Shulkat Banerjee. Dr. Banerjee is a professor at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, Kolkata campus. Dr. Banerjee's research contributions include over 50 publications in prestigious academic journals such as the Journal of Business Research, Journal of Product and Brand Management, Journal of Brand Management, International Journal of Consumer Studies, and the International Journal of Retail and Distribution Management. He further contributed teaching cases to Ivy Publishing Canada and Sage Business Cases UK. His research focuses on brand management and consumer behavior with a particular emphasis on political branding. Sir, now I would like to welcome you with a token of appreciation. So now I would like to hand over the session to you. The session is all yours.
Okay, very good afternoon to all of you. Before we start the session, this panel, let me little bit brief you about the idea of this particular panel. Okay, because last year when we started discussion on what should be little unique thing for INDAM, then we decided and we had a deliberation that an academic conference is halfway through until there is an industry academia interface. Because whatever we are discussing inside the auditorium or in classrooms, that must have an industry acceptance and usage of that. That was basically the outcome of two important things that was very new in INDAM 2025 here. That was one in the morning that we had, that is the policy panel. And what we will be having now, that is the industry panel. You can see the panel members. They are stalwarts in their existing field. They had all exposure to International Business Expo, and they have started their journey from a particular place and then expanded their business. So we are going to learn from them. We are going to understand their experience about an entrepreneur or from marketing organization point of view. So the way I am going to hold it, I'll start from Mr. Rajarsi onwards, and then we'll ask him to give his viewpoint for 5 minutes. So that way, once the entire round is over, then we will be having some questions, Q&A, and then we'll try to understand their viewpoints further. Okay, so now, Mr. Rajarsi, you can share your viewpoints on, because global footprint, India, how India is going to tackle global issues. That's basically the point of discussion today. Anybody?
A very good evening. Thank you for having me here. I am an IIFT alumni, and it's great to be back with the alma mater. I remember our IIFT director, Mr. Pravesh Sengupta, office had a statement behind his chair, and even in those days, 2004, that no domestic business is domestic. No business today can only say that I will look at the local issues, the local laws, and I will be happy and satisfied. Every business is becoming international, because you may not be international, but international players are coming in. So if you are in a small electrical business, you have to compete with the Chinese products, you have to do many things. Similarly, if you're in mid-term MSMEs or you're in bigger capacities. So this notion of being domestic or international today doesn't exist. Every business has to be internationally competitive to succeed. That's number one. Number two, ONGC Videsh. ONGC Videsh is probably the only PSU which is 100% business outside India and no business within India. Today we are in 19 countries. 15 countries we hold assets where we produce 10.5 million ton per annum of oil and gas. And we are there also in 3 business centers, Houston, Amsterdam, and Singapore. We have an office in subsidiary in Gift City. What we are seeing now in India, today brand India name is at its highest. So when we go out and go to any new country or an existing country, we do have a name, a reputation, or I'll say trust that this company, if it comes in, it can deliver. But also to remember that the moment my team is on an aircraft and flies out of India, in that country it is a contractor. It has to be first a good corporate citizen. It has to be first competitive and compete with the best in the business, be the Exxons, BP, Shell, Chevrons, be the Chinese NOCs or be the local companies. So you have to also maintain the laws of India, the laws of the host country, and be competitive enough. Plus, each of these countries, like in India, we have, let's say, 500 locations. And we are drilling across the country, but we have one law, one legal system, one fiscal regime, one social regime, one political regime. State and center may differ in a few places. In these 15 countries, each of this is a new fiscal regime, new political regime, new PSC, production sharing contract, new legal regime. So you have to be much more adaptable. You have to be much more flexible. We work in countries where in Sakhalin in Russia, we are working at minus 40 degrees. And in South Sudan, we are working in plus 50 degrees. We are working where the language may be Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, could be Arabian, could be some other language. And each of our people then have to be proficient in that language. So you have to adapt, you have to be flexible, you have to learn the culture, you have to learn to do business, you have to be sure that you become one of their own. When I open a door and enter the office of a minister in Colombia, I go there as the top 5 producing firm of Colombia. Yes, I have the tag of an Indian NOC, I have the reputation of an Indian NOC, but there I am first to make them comfortable that this company is here for long. We are not a fly-by-night operator. We are there for the long term. We are an FDI. We are there for minimum 30, 40, 50 years. If there is a change of head of state, as we see geopolitics at its maximum, the volatility at its maximum, there are swings from governments becoming far right to far left to liberal to conservatives across the world. There's a lot of nationalism coming up. So how do you succeed in this environment? You can only succeed if you believe that you are a firm of that country and you have a global perspective of being Indian. So India today, share a few more statistics with you, which becomes important in the energy industry, is that today we contribute or we consume only 6% of the world's energy basket. The total energy consumption of the world, we consume only 6%. And by 2050, less than 25 years from now, we will be consuming about 14%, to 6 to 14%. All the incremental growth that will happen in the world, more than 25% will come from one country, that is India. Today, we have 90,000 retail outlets across India. And do you know the number how many people go there in these retail outlets? 7 crore people go every day. 7 crore people, more than the population of countries, 70 million, go every day to this retail outlet spread across India with the belief that when they reach the retail outlet, they will get petrol, diesel, or CNG at an affordable price, which is accessible, which will be sustainable. So that is our major mandate, that we have to assure that as the GDP is growing at 7%, 7.5%, it will need energy to grow. And therefore, a country which has less than 1% of the oil and gas reserves, 18 or 19% of the world's population, it will need to look for energy abroad. And that's why the NDC Videsh comes in. So look for energy which can be acquired, which can be accessed, which can be monetized from our assets across the world. One more thing that is happening in today's world is, I believe there are only 2 mega trends. Today we are seeing many people say every year we see there are the new trends of 25, new trends of 26, 24 at some trends. In my belief, there are only 2 mega trends and every other thing is just a drop down of that. The first mega trend is climate change. Anything that we are doing today has to do something with climate change. In energy industry, definitely. So the transition is coming, transition will happen.
I see a future where a customer, a young customer of say 25-year-old goes with his or her vehicle to a retail outlet. There will be 7 different types of energy dispensed at that retail outlet, and it will be the customer who will pull the energy depending on whether it is sustainable, whether it is affordable, whether it is accessible, whether it is adaptable to different states of the country or elsewhere. So that is one, climate change is one, and different sorts of industries are coming up, different sorts of industries will get obsolete as we go along. So there has to be flexibility. The other big trend is AI or digitalization. So this is another big trend which will change everything, and the rate of change is getting so increased that it will be difficult if for the newer companies to be sustainable in this world if they don't change and change fast. So if you look at AI, it is also a leveler. It will do two things that in our industry, the most difficult work is that of a driller. They are on a rig. They have to handle heavy equipment, which we call tongs, drill pipes, drill collars. And therefore, it was a man's world. Very tall, heavy-built drillers used to come in. Even people below 5'6", 5'7" were not accepted. So now I see a lot of women coming in as drillers. Why? Because the rigs are like cockpits. Everything can be done at the push of a button. What it means that 50% of the population, which in any industry, will now become equal to anybody. The gender gap will vanish as we go along. And second thing that this AI will do is, we heard a lot, यार मेरे पास 35 साल का experience है, तुम्हारे पास क्या है? तुम तो अभी आए हो, सीखो पहले, समझो पहले, तुम्हारे पास इतने casual leave नहीं है, मैंने अपना साल नौकरी कर ली है. All that will go out of the window. Because there will be such learnings in the virtual world where experience can be substituted by 20 years experience to be equivalent to 5 years and some more education through the virtual content. Some people giving you that what they have, their lessons learned, which was not available earlier. You actually had to grind it out yourself. So it will not be, many of our experiences are 2 years experiences multiplied 10 times. So we say 20 years experience. Actually, we have been doing that whatever we learned in the first 2 years, that we are repeating. That will not happen. So experience, youth will come in a big way. They will make the decisions. Gender gap will go away. Energy transition will be happening, and it will touch the lives and every other sector of the industry. So along with that, one thing that's happening all over the world is now geopolitics is at its peak volatility. And last year, out of 7.5 billion, 5.5 billion people exercised their rights to choose their government across the world. From east to west, north to south, elections happened last year. And different types of government came in, some were for continuance, some were for totally different from what was happening. There were vast swings in some states. So, but one thing we are seeing, crude oil, surprisingly, with so much volatility, has been saying, and 1st January when I gave my inaugural address in my organization, it was just $2 of 1st January 24. So what does it mean? That in another world it would have been $120. Today it is just hovering around $5. So it shows that there is also some sense of moderation happening on demand, moderation happening on economic progress. The country which was driving the demand on products and energy for 2 decades, that's China. There people are now getting doubts on how much the further progress will be. It is now at 23 trillion economy, 20 plus. So even a growth of 2% is big for them, but they have been growing so much. So if they start decelerating or slowing down or not growing that much, that is having an impact. Further, that the OPEC countries, please do remember, have a tap wherein they can open and produce 4 million barrels. Today, the oil demand is at 103. If they open this tap, the prices go down. But they will then, the revenue, they may get some market share, but the revenue will come down. So as a country and as a company, my last comment would be that be ready to change very fast, number one. Do more capacity building within the organization and any institute that you are. Be ready to learn and relearn and unlearn new skills. And also, don't rest on your past laurels. I am the biggest company of India, where I am the biggest energy provider. If you don't start every day that I am here to compete and become the best, it is one statistics, the top 20 companies of 2001, which were there in the NASDAQ and in US. Today, can you guess how many of them are there in the top 20 after 20 years? I took a poll day before yesterday in our institute. People said about 50%, some said 4, 5 out of 20. Actually, in 20 years, only one has retained its place among the top 20, that is Microsoft. All other names have changed. So this is where the world is heading. Any company or any institute or any organization or any country, if it feels that we are the leader and we shall remain leader just by not doing anything, then you will just vanish. So difficult times, but it also creates opportunities. So NDC Videsh, we are seeing more opportunity now. We have been the late starters. There are people who were there in the 1900s, but now it is giving us more opportunity. India brand is at its highest. So we do feel that the next decade or next 2 decades would belong to India. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Mr. Rajeshri. So quick take from his comment. He talked about 2 major trends, that is climate change and AI, and then major strength that he would like to figure out that adaptability is the key, and you should have strong confidence on brand India. Okay. Now our next speaker, I would like to request Mr. Sanjay to share his experience, because if you really see, he's one of those who are not from this particular part. He's one of the pillars of state of West Bengal. With a humble start from this particular state, he expanded his business globally. So I would like to request him to share his experience, how from this particular state he grew, and how the company is now handling global challenges.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Dr. Saket Banerjee. And first of all, I would like to thank Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, the Vice Chancellor, and Dr. Rangarajan, the Center Head, Dr. Sumit Kundu, and the President, and for this opportunity to be here at this Temple of Learning at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. And the subject could not be more timely and more relevant in today's context. I think Mr. Asri has really summed up very well that you have to be ready to change and change at any time. And so I was thinking that there could be a word, local. You have to be global but local. So that local is the current scenario. Okay, coming to this, 1 minute I will talk about where do we stand and how does India, what is our position as of now. We talked about brand India. I think people now look at India, talk with India with utmost respect. That's the first and foremost thing. I would recall 20 years back when we used to go to US to meet our customers. This is the practical example I'm giving you. So when one of the customers at mid-level, he would come out and meet on the road sometime, and also we were more graceful on the reception. I say, oh, acha, you have come. You would go, suited, booted, properly dressed. That okay, we are going to meet the customer and all that kind of thing. And then he would meet you in the reception and say, acha, you brought some samples. Why don't you leave it here? We'll have a look. And whether you throw the samples or you'll have a look also, you don't know. But today, I think the same customer, their chairman or MD, they seek your time that whether you are meeting for lunch or dinner. But to cut the story short, I'll just give you a little background that where from India has come to what position. About our company, so that to put the context together, pattern, some of you who are from here, but I can see mostly very influential international faculty members here. So people who are from Kolkata, they would say, or Bengal, they would see pattern is more visible in terms of our water tanks, which is more seen on the rooftop of Kolkata. But our major part of the business is engineering exports, precision electrical products, which we export to countries like US, Canada, and Mexico. We are part of GBC, which we call Global Value Chain, of companies like Asia Brown Weberry, Emerson's, EGS, and at times during COVID times, they were declared as essential services. So in turn, we were also declared as essential service. So I was surprised, and it's a matter of great pride for me that the presidents of Emerson sitting there used to count our production. Because any disruption in the supply chain, whether you are sitting in India, sometimes when I see one floor in our pattern office, where only people are doing one international calls. Somebody is connected from China, somebody is from Mexico, somebody's office is here. So it's an interconnected global world. So what we are exporting are the light engineering products from the state of West Bengal, and all our purchase orders are with arrival date. How, why, what, nobody is interested, and I talked about the companies which are of international level, and you have to just meet the delivery date. And so to maintain that as a necessity, the mother of invention, we have put up our 2 warehouses in US, in Memphis and New Jersey. So the customer has that mental this thing that I have my 60 days stock lying there. So we have to be always innovative. We have to be always responsive to the requirements. So the customer is never till date. I would give you one example. Sometimes due to the delay in the shipments and shipping companies, which can always happen, or any particular. We airfare the goods where the cost of the airfare is more than the goods, but the customer has never failed. So what is more important is your commitment. On a lighter note, Mr. Raghunathan, 10 days back we were speaking. I was supposed to be in Cook today. This is the first time in my life, and I'm being honest that I had made a commitment which I forgot to write down. And honestly, my mistake. So we happened to talk. He said, 17 को मिल रहा है. I said, 17 को क्या हुआ? He said, अरे आपसे तो 3 महीना पहले commitment हुआ है. And then I changed my plan. Because commitment once made is commitment done. So that's what, in our college also, the later when I'm saying the value of commitment is St. Xavier's early morning, some people used to say, you can discount it by 50%, you can discount it by 75%. So how much you are discounted is very important in your life. That if you have given a word, there is no value of the written document. With due respect to all the legal luminaries, your word has to be your eyes. The banker like one of the senior bankers, Mr. Raja Gopal from Indian Bank chairman, he used to say, Sanjay, I don't look in the papers, I look in your eyes. Your eyes will tell me whether what you are saying is right or wrong. So that is what is your conviction, that is what the commitment is for each and every one. Because I will not like to repeat what he has so beautifully summarized. But the very basics that when India, the world is looking at India. The world is looking at India as a reliable, responsive trading partner or sourcing partner or IT partner or healthcare partner or AI partners, whatever area you call it. It's for us to take it and take it fast. The only challenge would be how fast we respond. Because our neighboring countries, whether it's Vietnam or Cambodia or Taiwan, they would be responding faster. So it is for all of us to join this time, and it can be never better. Sometimes people say that what is the future in India, what is the future of India? I say you are the future and the future is India. So it is up to us, how do we build it? And same thing if you talk about our state, I will just take this moment. I always say whether this glass is full, half empty or half full. It is our perception, both are right. If you go to other states, you might have traffic congestion, you might have electricity problem, you might have something else. But why we only talk about negatives or the things which are only talked about, which are not very, very popular to hear or popular to see. The perception lasts longer than reality. Things are changing, things have changed. If you look at West Bengal particularly, see, we are the highest in hosiery, we are the highest in foundry, we are 41 IT companies, the largest of the names, they are all here. So many institutes, and the government is responsive. Now they have formed with the industry panel, the global business summit which happens. Industry person is a co-chair of that panel. Like the government has formed 6 panels. I also chair one of the panels where the chief secretary is the chair, and I'm the co-chair of the export and logistics panel. And we have 8 secretaries of the government. So you meet, you discuss. So it's a changing scenario. We have to also spread the good news. The things are changing. It's a fast changing world, whether it is in the state, because most of you, everybody may not be going out. Some of you would like to stay here in Kolkata or in West Bengal. So things are really, really very, very good. There are many, many companies. In our company, there's a medium-sized company, I would say 3,500 employees we have directly in manufacturing. Of course, it has an indirect multiplier. We have never lost 1 hour in the strike or lockout. That is very, very important because people only have that kind of impression. यहाँ पर आपको land नहीं है, labor नहीं है. For the land also, government has now allowed all land to be converted into freehold. So for industry, basically these are the 2 things: land and labor.
So, and I'm not talking about my example. There are many companies like Exide or Imami and all, but never lost 1 hour in this type of about ITC headquarters is here. And which Ghosh will talk about Bandhan Bank story. So we need to talk, it's like a smell, good or bad. So what is happening good also as a, resident of the city, from the state, it is our also duty to talk, the good things and change the perception. That is what I very strongly believe and suggest to each one. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Mr. Sanjay. A quick takeaway. 3 important things he tried to. So he witnessed growing respect for Indian products globally. And then 2 important things, he put emphasis on innovation. You have to innovate fast. And then the commitment is the most crucial thing to get business success. So many thanks. We will take it forward. Now our third speaker will be Mr. Ghosh, Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh. He is the person we can say that single-handedly empowered bottom of pyramid, make them financially independent, and now they are handling wealth of ultra high net worth individuals. So he saw the entire cycle, okay, from bottom managing wealth of making them empowered, bottom of pyramid, and then getting business from high net worth individuals. So I would like to understand his viewpoint, the way he is trying to see these global changes and Indian footprint.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee, and very rightly you are addressing it on that. Started with a bottom, and now I am getting the opportunity to the customer, you, and the pattern, everyone is my customer. Thank you to Sabit on that. It's a very good opportunities, and for this the discussion in today in INDAM, which is identify the issue is a very right time, how we can be like to make it. I recalled on that in the 2015 and the Prime Minister called a couple of them asking on that the same point discussion, what we can do for India in future, specifically that the beat with the China. So this is the way we have been thought in that line. I'm coming on that the India have the one big opportunities is there, the 1.4 billion people we have. Out of that, the 65% of this population is a less than 35 years, who are in a future for India, youth group. And we will be like to see that the 20% of this the population will be like to attract by the foreign talent. And so that the India is a hub of the talent. And this is our big opportunities to sell our country and sell on that, to reach to this the abroad, to reach our country. Second point on that, our GDP growth, the last year has come 7.2. This year we are expecting 6.5. If you compare to the world GDP, 2.3. US GDP, 2.7. China GDP, 4.5. No one is nearby of us. So we have that the talent pool. We have the opportunities of the economy growth, which can be we like to attract. How we can be like to take our marketing in the world. So that is our part. And what are the other thing we can be like to do? So my one point is the biggest area is coming in the future, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. So green energy. It is a bigger way investment is coming in the world, which India can be contributed to the highest because of the population, because of the urbanization, because of the lots of infrastructure development in here, and we are like to focus on that, how we can be like to make it, this is the green energy in India. And I hope that that the government support,
and the world support is very high in here. 16,000 crores green bond have been raised by the government of India. But where it will be like to distribute, to give this the next generation of the people who run their business as a green business, they are not finding out the way. So we have to need to educate those all business entity how they can be developed of this type of green business, which can be attract this the fund, and of course it will be very high demand outside of India. If you know that the total of this the environmental impact, which is called that carbonization, 90% contributed by the real estate. So real estate is a bigger contributor on that. How real estate can be used this fund to make their infrastructure as a green, and that is a big opportunities for our country, because every of the country out of India also very much interested to funding in here. Next, my point on that, whatever the way we are making, you said that the green battery and electric vehicle, this is a big opportunities in India to manufacturing it and exporting to the world. Because whatever we have the capacity of the youth, capacity, we have the funding capacity, and as a country, we can be like to contribute to the world. And these are some areas which is we called that the green battery, electrical vehicle, solar. So this is a big opportunities for India. Next point I am coming on that, the agri product export. Because India is an agri-based of the economy. When I thinking on that, the agri product means majorly we are exporting the vegetable, fish, meat. And in this the segment, we are the 8th largest agri exporter in the world. But the point is there now changing is a differently coming on that. The one change is coming on that, not the value, is the volume. So whatever the vegetable price we are exporting, but the same way we are newly exporting on that as a Jaffran cashew. Which the price wise 1 kg is the value is higher than the vegetable. So that is a very good opportunities of export of this type of item, which can be India can be like to earn more foreign currency from that. And that is a big opportunities of the country. Why the big opportunities? There is a 2 point if you can recall on that. 1 crore 50 lakhs NRI who know the taste of Indian food, and they have the demand in their in all these abroad country. And those the people, they are seasonally coming in here and they are carrying it. Sometimes seasonally coming in here and they are tested new product, and also again they are demanding from their country. Then our export opportunities of the agriculture in this type of new value-based product is a very important demand is coming. Third point on that, if you see, every year India have the 1 crore tourist has come. And this 1 crore tourist, the mixed with the culture of the India. They've taken a food in here or purchase something from here, and they are getting and they are searching from their country. So our opportunities is coming on those countries of that. This is also export opportunities is good. So if we focus more of this type of tourist will come to India, they can be also mixed the culture and their demand will become to their country, and our export will be like to increase. And it's not in a small number. If it's together, I said that the 2.5 crores, that means the population of the Australia. So if you say that the 1 crore of the tourists, the Greece population is together is like on that. This is not a small number, but one thing is there, our country is a big. In the same time, this country, we are getting the winter, summer, and ice, raining. So we are there a lot of opportunities in our India, how we can be attract to the tourists more. And so that our opportunities of the export in the long run will become to big way on that. And the third one point is there, the total of these type of some 1-2 point I like to explain in here to challenges of this. Any of the product which are going to the outside of India, even in India, I am saying that more focus on outside of India. First, we like to create the trust on this product. This product quality is not compromised. So if the product is not developed in that level, in the international level, and product is some quality is a question, then maybe we'll be like to again return back. This export will become down on that, and we cannot compete with others. So quality is a bigger challenges for India to maintain in the standard of outside of India. We should be like to focus on that part on them. Second is in logistics supply. Logistics supply chain should be like to source well, so that a time should maintain in a better way. Quality and logistics supply, that the two matters will be like to help our countries. This is the export and the product will be demand from the outside of country will become more in here. Third, every people know that only we have the export IT. And it is not in a IT that much we are exporting. We are giving that some call center service. This is not the real IT. But whatever the other people also mentioned about it, the future is coming to the AI. And because of India is a talent hub, we have a lot of opportunities to build up the skill, particular of those areas, which have been needed, the people expected on that. Amazon, Microsoft will be invested $20 billion in India. So if the money will come in here, we have a need on that to develop the skill of AI and programmer. They say that the 250 million programmer is need in the future of India. So this is another opportunities. We can be like to earn the foreign currency in here. And the next step, the point on that, we have the different types of the people in our country. Plus means I have been saying that not divided on that. Some of the capacity is the bottom, mass, and the top. So how we can be like to segregate the skill of the mass people on the basis of the foreign demand. What is the foreign demand? Foreign demand is one thing that we will like to big address on that. Other country, US, Canada, or UK, there is a strong health system in their country, but they have not the manpower. We can be provided a small training, skill development as a nurse and supply to them huge opportunities for those countries, and we can be like to capture on that, which now capturing by Philippines or Indonesia, they are more in there. So we are not yet that market and that number of that. So skill development is another opportunities for our country to reach on that. These are the couple of points I feel that the opportunities for India to grow the foreign footfall is better way on that. Funding is not the issue. Banks are reaching to the every corner of the country. So that, if you see that with the startup, we are the highest speed of the growth in among the world on that. So if I come to this UPI, whatever say that the 23 trillion dollar are transacted on a year. So we have that infrastructure is there. So we have need on that. If we like to do more of this MSME growth, employment will become, foreign demand will be increased, quality will be maintained, IT demand also internally also develop more. So that is a good opportunities for India. Thank you.
Okay, so many thanks, Mr. Ghosh. So if I really quickly summarize 5 important takeaways, he talked about 3 industry. One is green energy, then second one value-led agri exports, not volume-led, and third is the growth of tourism sector. One important thing that he tried to highlight that the quality perception of Indian products that should be improved. And last but not the least, the skill development of the mass lower strata of the society, because we have a huge population there. The way Bandhan did their empowerment, so they should have that opens in their hand, required skills, so that they can also perform and they can also contribute for the growth of Indian economy. Thank you. So now our fourth speaker will be Ajaya. Ajaya was our student. He was my student also, okay, and he works with IFC and he is in the lead climate advisory role. So he has authority to comment on climate change, because that's, as you know, in our marketing branding area also, we are getting research papers on whether consumers really bother about climate change or it's a Hebrew kind of thing for them. So I would like to request now Ajay to throw some light on that particular issues and how India is planning to handle that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Banerjee, and thank you, Dr. Rangarajan, for inviting me here. It's always a pleasure to come back to IIFT. It's even more pleasure to hear that even a Trumpified world today, the green energy and climate change comes. So I feel much more comfortable to talk about that issue. The internationalization of Indian business is not something very new. We have seen that even from the very early stage of market liberalization and globalization, Indian industries have started to go abroad. They invested in the strategic assets, acquired some of the leading brands of the world, invested quite opportunistically as well as strategically in developing some of the niche technologies, which holds the strategic importance for India and the region. And that journey still continues. But today, the overall world environment is very different, where the Indian industries needs to navigate in a very complex and volatile world. And few factors which we see are contributing to a crisis situation, which is very different today, and the academia as well as the developing world is terming that as a polycrisis. And polycrisis is a particular situation where multiple crisis situations happen in a way that each crisis is transnational in nature. So it's just not, the impact is not just regional, but it's felt globally. And it's happening all at a simultaneous time, leading to multiple inflection points in the world. So that is the complexity through which business has to navigate today. And few very apparent trends. One is the geopolitical tensions, especially in the major economic hub of the world. Number two, the macroeconomic instability, which is very palpable today, that post-COVID-19 crisis. Both the developed world as well as the developing world are badly affected by the deepening debt crisis. And the crisis is deepening and worsening almost every day. Number three, the bigger global development challenges. So it's just not a climate change. Climate change is, of course, a very important trigger. But beyond that, there are water crisis, the crisis of migration, and now the crisis of the job losses and the job creation in the developing world. And last but not the least, it's of course the technological disruption. Now, a few quick recommendations which perhaps could be needed for the Indian industries to change their DNA if they really want to navigate through this situation going forward. Number one, there has to be a close review of strengthening the regional competitiveness of industry as against the global competitiveness. Because we have seen that from post-2008 onwards, the global value chain has started to taper off. And led by the technological disruptions or through the geopolitical backlash, a lot of the global value chain started to recede. many of the value chain of a number of different industries, be it consumer products or large scale manufacturing, have started to go back to home, driven by Industry 4.0, the 3D printing, and many of the advent of this technology, which really leads to a situation where industries needs to look for how to build the regional competitiveness, working closely with the government. The government has started also to introduce a number of different policies, be it the PLI scheme or the whole industrial policy-led support, what we have seen even in the US or in the European Union. But overall, there has to be a more sharpened focus on the regional competitiveness. Second thing, the previous speakers all talked about the climate change sustainability. I would add to that sustainability should be embraced in a more strategic and a holistic fashion. That is what should be the need of the hour, to go beyond the mere compliance to help leverage sustainability as a source of competitive advantage. And if we look at many of the large global brands and MNCs, they are exactly doing that. What it means that today the companies are facing the investors who have very stringent focus on the environment and social governance, which is ESG. The consumers in the developed world, in UK or in the European Union, are ready to provide certain premium when they are buying the products which are coming from a sustainable supply chain or a sustainable value chain, which is also called the so-called the green premium or the greenium. There has been a very recent Harvard Business School publication, which has evaluated a large number of companies which are getting the superior return on investment in US stock market because of their inherent or the fundamentals are aligned to the green business. So it's just not their public relations stance or the disclosure on the climate change or sustainability, but the inherent fundamental business they are operating in are essentially impacting the environment and the social governance system of the society. So that's where they're able to earn the higher superior return. But at the same time, in a number of different technological areas, for example, be it electric vehicle, battery, the solar, wind, the new generation renewable energies, or even the areas like climate resilient agriculture, we see that the cost of technology is coming down drastically. So the cost of storing energy, the renewable energy, or we call the battery energy storage, which was there 5 years back, and what we see today, there is a drastic difference on that. And that leads to the new optimism for the industries to invest in those value chains. And some of these value chains are actually the global in nature. So if we have seen that how China has really leveraged some of these value chains, be it in the electric vehicle battery or even the vehicle manufacturing or even a solar, and they are sort of creating a global competitive advantage in those areas. So it's very important that even the Indian industries, be the large scale manufacturing companies or even the small and the medium enterprises, which are playing probably a particular role in those value chains, they understand the rule of the game. They understand that how they need to scale up by plugging themselves into the global value chain or the regional value chains of some of the large players or the anchor investors, and take those propositions global by continuously improving quality and the reliability of their offering. So that brings me to the third point, that Indian industries who have aspiration to go global should innovate for impact. And it really today doesn't make much sense if the industries just get stuck up in the low-cost manufacturing or the low-cost service providing. So they need to invest, and they need to invest in the innovation. And perhaps there is a huge opportunity which exists today in the what we call the South-South innovation. It's not just the innovation coming from the North and being imposed or being sold in the Indian market or the market in the emerging economies of the South. It is even there are many players even in the global South who have innovative technology which are affordable, reliable, and sustainable, and which has the largest market they can find even in the global South. So that opportunity today exists for Indian industries because the cost of innovation is going up significantly in countries like China and the South Korea. And they are actually coming out of the many of the value chains of the innovative technologies where they were present previously. So that is the space where Indian industries can really capture, and they can find some of those innovations sellable and marketable in the global south, and the other emerging economies. And last but not the least, today there are areas where industries can go global and earn positive return by amplifying their impact on the global development. And I emphasize on this point because the development institutions which I'm representing, we have a number of cases today where we see that how strategically the businesses or the private sector working closely with the government and also with a number of innovative startups to bring the new solutions to the poorer and the developing world. And I started to talk about these polycrisis situations, which is leading to the different crisis situations across the poorer world, whether that is in terms of the water crisis, the climate crisis, the lack of affordable energy to a number of poorer population. Now, this is the area where increasingly the government is open to private sector participation. Primarily because if we look at the history of last 10 years or even after the COVID-19 situation, the whole fiscal space for the government to invest some of the development projects has drastically come down. So the current thinking is that where a private sector can leverage the public funding, and the public funding can really catalyze the mobilization of the private capital. But if there are $1 of public capital which is being invested, there has to be a $10 of private sector capital needs to be mobilized there. That is the kind of range and that is the kind of scale which exists today. If some of the global development crisis or the problems needs to be solved, whether in terms of introducing the new generation of fuels, grid connected, the solar power or energy efficient homes, or even climate resilient agriculture or infrastructure development. So all these areas are open to private sector participation. Certainly, there is a bigger role for the government to ensure the macroeconomic stability, to ensure that the proper legal and the compliance-related enforcement are in place, and certainly unlock the availability of the cheaper capital and other modes of financing, whether that is through the public source or multilateral sources, which help the private capital to come in some of these spaces. So these are few recommendations for the businesses aspiring to go global.
Okay, so thank you, Ajay. Quick summarization of his viewpoint. So he introduced the concept, explained the concept of polycrisis. He focused on regional competitiveness, that's most important. And one important comment that he made, that the sustainability should now go beyond this buzzword thing. It should be part of DNA of the business houses, okay? It should be part of their regular practices. So now the last speaker of the session, I would like to invite Mr. John Mathai, so to share his comments on this particular topic, how India is going to handle global issues and try to present the country as a whole.
Thank you, Dr. Sagar Banerjee. At the outset, I would like to thank IIFT and Dr. Advisory, especially for inviting the Damodar Valley Corporation in this forum where we are discussing about this global footprint for India. Now, I primarily come from a polluting industry. We run 6 thermal power plants, and we have a network of 8,000 square kilometers of distribution circles. And along with this, we also supply water in the Damodar Valley area. That's around 25,500 square kilometers of area we supply water. And then whatever we produce here, whether it is electricity with this, that we primarily the electricity we supply across the country and also abroad. We also supply about 300 megawatts of energy to Bangladesh. Now, when I look at my own industry, I feel that yes, this is also a global industry. Despite the fact that yes, we are exporting to Bangladesh, but when I look at my machines, I find that some of my machines are from China, Germany, and the major suppliers of this equipment are all, many of them are MNCs. So that way, in some way, I am also a global company. Now, at the same time, when I listen to all my co-speakers in the panel, I get immediately reminded of the American anthropologist James Cassio, who spoke about the banning. Today's world being brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. In such a world, which is highly complex today, we are also operating our businesses in that scenario. So when we look at what is there for India, and when we think about India in the world, first that we come across is that there is definitely a presence. We find that if you look at specific sectors like information technology, we find that India's presence we can feel. Even as a top of the technological organizations, we find Indians being there and a lot of Indian diaspora operating in that field that we visibly see and we feel. When we also look at pharmaceuticals, we find that perhaps India is a supplier of the medicine to the world. So there is a huge presence in terms of pharmaceuticals. There is also a presence as Mr. Ghosh was speaking, there is an agricultural products which you can find in many parts of the world. Indian products are visible. When we look at even the sector in which I am representing, renewable energy, we find that Indian companies are setting up their shops and they are successfully operating many renewable energy projects around the globe. We also find that Indians, as we can see from Ajay Bandapati, they're also having a lot of financial services offering to the world. So it's in many ways, we find that Indian presence, Indian footprints are, we can clearly, visibly see. Another thing which we see, as Mr. Ghosh said, there is a Indian demographics operating. There is also potential Indian demographics which are going to provide some kind of a human resource supply to the world. So in many ways, India is already in the global trend. And when you look at even the scale in which we are operating, say the global GDP growth itself, and if you look at the developing nature of the country, we find that we are inching towards the global standard. When we are all here, at the same time, we are getting torn between two diametrically opposite concepts. One thing is this hunger for growth that all industries are aiming up to. Even as a polluting industry, despite I have a need for getting into renewables, I feel that yes, there is a need to even invest more in the thermal energy because the kind of growth demand that the country is posing. So there is a plan to add around 90,000 megawatts of thermal energy into the system because the 1,700 billion units of energy that we are producing for India through electricity is not good enough. Now, while we have this growth for hunger is diametrically getting opposed by our desire for sustainable and inclusive growth. So this is one dilemma that we are facing. And perhaps this is one issue that from a human resource point of view, one need to answer and address. Because there is a limit to progress, there is a limit to growth. As far as a country like India is concerned, we can definitely argue that our carbon footprints, per capita footprints are much lower than the developing nations. Even the developed nations also. But at the same time, there is also responsibility on us for a responsible consumption that the growth itself should also address simultaneously the issues of sustainability and inclusiveness. When we look at our demographics, there is a question about whether this demographics is really a boon or a bane. Many natural biologists argue that perhaps controlling the population is perhaps a better answer than controlling the ecology. Now, we are in a dilemma. While we are having this demographic dividend, at the same time, we also are getting perplexed because of the question about the global warming and the climate change. And the most of it is affecting the country itself because of the high population and the demographic placement of our people. A large number of people living below the poverty line. Now, in this particular scenario, what exactly is a call before us? One thing which comes fundamentally to all of us by listening to all the speakers is that there is no going back. We need to move forward to make more and more global footprints. As some of the speakers said, we need to move very fast. Mr. Bhutia was telling there is a need to go fast. Whatever it may be, we need to take the opportunities and enter the many business opportunities of the world. This is something which we have to address and we have to get into. This is one thing. Second thing which comes into the factor is about the strategic thinking while getting into this kind of business scenarios. So while we are entering the business at the same time, we also need to think about the ways in which the risks are minimized, and then at the same time the dividends are coming in a much larger scale to our country. This is the second part of it. Without government policies, without government support, the entering into the global scenario is a difficult situation, because as many countries are getting polarized, they're also taking their own hard stance in terms of tariff structure and many other restrictions. There is a need for government to actively support the way China has done it. There is a need to support the country to go forward to making the industrialists, helping the easing the kind of entry into the globe. And fourth aspect that comes to my mind is about bringing in the sustainability and inclusivity in every business that we do, especially when we are making the global footprints, whether in terms of energy, whether in terms of allied services, whether even in terms of supplying the manpower to the world. The focus should be about sustainability and inclusiveness. These are my thoughts on this particular occasion.
Okay, many thanks, Mr. Muthal. Okay, so now he broadly pointed out three important things. One, if you see the global complexity, and then the strong presence of India and huge potential of India in context of global counterparts. Okay. Now, because we have paucity of time, we have to start another technical session from 5:15. So if we really summarize all five, we have a consensus in this particular thing that as per India, we are big in volume. Now, this is high time to be bigger in value. Okay, so that's now quick question, one or two we can take before we wrap it up. Okay, so.
Happy to get a chance to question. Otherwise, we get questioned always. Thanks to the esteemed panelists who are here. My one simple question as to how the industry is perceiving. Because on the one hand, again after a lull, Chinese exports have started increasing. And we are expecting a protective policy regime happening from 20th of January. Which may have some kind of an impact. So, what is your kind of a take? Are we expecting some major kind of things to happen from the industry's reaction, or as usual, the industry will always, as usual, will respond to that also? Can I? Yes.
So Professor Rangarajan, I think you are spot on. Everybody is waiting for 20th or 21st morning, whether you call it Trump tax or Trump terror, whatever, to be more straight. And even he has appointed, I think, administrator or minister for tariffs. If you have seen the study paper, whose only job is to put on tariffs. So naturally, the whole world is looking at it, whether one of the leading paper study said that which are the three countries he will start with: Mexico, Canada, and another one, and then followed by, of course, China comes in that list, and then last India. So coming specifically to India's context, and particularly that how the Indian industry looks at it, I think that time should be favorable for us. When you look at the comparative figures, because my business is more towards US and Canada, and we are in daily contact, and I understand the sentiments there. People are feeling so many new customers are approaching us. That's the ground reality. Many new customers from different parts of the US, because they could see the writing on the wall that maybe the time is now for India. That's what I was trying to say. This is what something I feel.
My one sentence this would be that it will get worse before it gets better. From the energy perspective, I do believe that some of the turmoils or the wars or conflicts that are going on would be resolved. It won't be overnight, but it will get a bit more difficult initial 3 to 6 months before it gets better. And you would see that there will be more of South-South collaboration in this as we go along. And the new president of US will also look for quick wins. So India and our present head of state, the Honorable Prime Minister, both of them share a very good equation. So if there is one friend in the world in the head of states, it would be that India could then replace many of the others in business of different sectors. And India-US strategic partnership is also at its strongest now. The Quad of 4, which we do, the Quad, and then the 2+2 dialogue that is happening every year between US and India. So things would look better. Our neighborhood is not looking very good. Our neighborhood, our neighbors are not very stable now, if I may use the word. So that is a worry. But again, I believe that in our industry, in our firm, or in our sector, every such turmoil is also an opportunity.
I will give the different views on that. I look it in that the international competition, they are our competitor. If we see that any of the enterprise, when we are started any of the business, we have the internal competitor, how we face it. We can be, one way say that we are based to build up the quality of the service, if it's a service sector. If it is a product, we should be like to make an innovative product, which the consumer will be like to attract me for more. And third is my product will like to comparatively cost effective for that consumer. These are the three matters. We can be like to focus, not like that the request to the government, you stop that product, then my product will be like to come up as a sale. This is a different way on that. Yes, of course, is a need in the relationship, but if we see that the America, consumer is demanding our product, nobody can stop, government cannot be stopped. But the point is there, if our price is higher than the China, though it is a tax is given to the imposed to the China is higher, our is lower, but after all, if it is our product is high price, maybe we will lose some business. If quality is not comparative to them, then can we lose the business? If their supply chain are given the very quick service to the product, to the country, they may be like to gain on that. So we should be like to look on that, how we can be compete the product quality with the China. And how we can be like to cost effective way to grow on that. If we see that, of course, there is an incident happened, but we can gain on that. The iPhone is developed in here. We are supplying the iPhone. No semiconductor is coming. That is an incidental happened something, we are getting on that. But if we not maintain this, the quality of iPhone and supply, then again they will go to the other country. So we should be like to focus on this area is more, and government should be drive on that, how quality can maintain if it is anything export from our country to the outside.
Okay, one more question, then after that we can take it forward during tea break.
So, Balaji, I would also like to tell you one point about this which comes to my mind. One thing is that this scenario which is throwing large on us is also throwing two opportunities. One opportunity is that it makes the industry aware and independent to look at things in an independent way. Second thing which comes to my mind is that this will also make the country stand, the government to be standing with the business, because he cannot be alone. The country has, because it is something coming from a country. So our country will also stand with the businessman to give an opportunity in that way. That's why I look at this particular scenario.
Okay, Sumit would like to ask a question. INDAM president, we have to respect. So last question, then we can take it forward during tea break. Yes,
Thank you. So just wanted to get some perspectives from the panel. So I live in the gateway to Latin America, which is Miami. So what is this India stance on Latin America, trade, commerce, investment, role of Indian multinationals in Latin America? Thank you.
I'll speak for our company. We are there in 3 countries, Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia. We are looking for, we have an MOU with the NOC of Argentina, YPF, and the YPF chairman is visiting us on Monday. We are trying to look at bigger deals. Ecuador is a country which seems interesting. And Brazil for energy, with its entering the OPEC as an observer on one side, with it being part of the BRICS on the other side, it being part of now G20 presidency, it was there this year. So Petrobras is also a typical NOC which is looking to go outside now. And it has also requiring partnerships because for its large capex subsalt investments as it comes off the Buzios field or the Tupi field or others, which requires a lot of capex. So Brazil is doing very well. So this, I believe, Latin America, Mexico has its issues of some of the mafia and gangs, but the sector is doing quite well. We would definitely believe that if it is one area that we focus on, would be Latin America.
Okay, so thank you all for your wonderful insights. I believe this session you enjoyed and it goes well with INDAM main theme. And what we really got, what Bill was pointing out in the morning, the managerial implications. Okay, so managerial implications of our academic research that we discussed a lot in depth. So now I would like to request Ankana to complete the process.
As we come to the end of this highly engaging and insightful panel discussion on the agenda for Global Indian Footprints, a Business Perspective, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all our distinguished speakers for their valuable insights and thought-provoking perspectives. Each of you has brought unique expertise, enriching our understanding of how Indian businesses can strategically position themselves on the global stage. I also express my gratitude to our esteemed moderator, Professor Shulkat Banerjee, for skillfully steering the discussion and ensuring that we had a stimulating exchange of ideas. Finally, a big thank to all the attendees for your active participation and keen interest, which made the session truly dynamic and interactive. Let us carry forward the valuable takeaways from today's discussion as we collectively strive for excellence and innovation in our global pursuits. Before we conclude, I would like to felicitate our distinguished speakers with the token of appreciation. First, I would like to invite Now, I would like to invite Sri Ajay Bandopadhyay to come forward. Next, I request Dr. John Mathai to accept our heartfelt gratitude. Finally, I would like to call forward Sri Chandrasekhar Ghosh to accept the token of appreciation. These mementos symbolizes our sincere thanks for their invaluable insights and contributions to this session. Now, I would like to felicitate our moderator for this session, Professor Shaikat Banerjee. Thank you, sir, for effortlessly conducting this panel session. Now, I kindly request you all to enjoy a short coffee break. Thank you, everyone.